So we have breaking news. Dan Bongino has now been named the deputy director of the FBI. Also, CNN is losing it over Elon Musk's emails to federal workers, and Kathy Hochul is attempting to fight back. But where we're going to start first is MSNBC having to painfully report on this story about Dan Bongino. Hear it for yourself.
We have some breaking news from President Trump. He just announced on his knockoff X that he is appointing right-wing commentator Dan Bongino to serve as the deputy FBI director. Yep, you heard that correctly. In his announcement, Trump called this great news for law enforcement and American justice. Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and former NYPD officer.
Now, first off, I love how he had to report on that story, and he sounded demoralized. Like, what, are you okay, man? Do you need some assistance there mentally? Because he just sounded deflated. I mean, you let me know if you guys got that energy from him. Now, secondly, more importantly, here's what President Trump said in the actual announcement. He said, great news for law enforcement and American justice. Dan Bongino, a man of incredible love and passion for our country, has just been named the next deputy director of the FBI by the man who will be the best ever director, Kash Patel. And then President Trump goes on to say here, working with our great new United States Attorney General Pam Bondi and Director Patel, fairness, justice, law, and order will be brought back to America and quickly. Congratulations, Dan. You guys have to understand this. If you thought they were outraged about Kash Patel, you now have Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. Yeah, they're going to be freaking out. So, of course, this will be a story this week as well. And Dan Bongino did respond. He said, thank you, Mr. President, Attorney General Bondi, and Director Patel. Stephen Miller said Dan Bongino is the warrior America needs in this vital role. And President Trump followed up by saying this, another aspect of the life of Dan Bongino that I think is very important. He has a great wife, Paula, and two wonderful daughters who truly love their dad. What an incredible job Dan will do. Now, the sweet justice in all of this is this statement here. Deep state, your greatest nightmare has come to pass. There's no waking up from this. Kash Patel is the FBI director. Patel's deputy director is Dan Bongino. Just leave DC. Patriots have seized control of the FBI. This is just amazing news, in my opinion. And of course, I do have an outrage from people on the left, starting with Tim Miller. He writes, what in the living F? Again, you're going to see much more meltdown over the week, but I just wanted to let you guys know what's happening right now. And some other crazy liberals are saying this. Trump's appointment tonight of podcast ranting fascist Dan Bongino as deputy director of FBI is near Gates level ugly. Another individual said Dan Bongino was just selected as deputy FBI director. Legitimately the worst possible pick, feeling awful for the hardworking men and women of that agency. And lastly here, Trump and Patel just named right-wing propagandist and conspiracy theorist Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBFNI, Bottoms Up America. So, of course, they're only going to see this through the eyes of their derangement. Now, speaking of derangement, Elon Musk put a post up on X telling federal workers to report what are the 5 things they did over the past week. And if they don't respond, that will be looked at as a resignation. Now, I look at this as him trolling, in my own personal opinion, just being transparent with you right up front. But the media did not, and they ran with this, and now they're really obsessing over this issue. Let me show you exactly what they're saying.
Numerous agencies, including the FBI, are telling their workers not to respond to this mass email from last night that was put out at the direction of Elon Musk, asking them to list what they've accomplished that week. So what do you know about that?
And what's interesting here is that these are Trump appointees who are telling their agency staffs essentially to not respond to Musk's directive, essentially contradicting Elon Musk about how they should proceed. And I think it really goes to show that there could be a standoff brewing between Musk and some of these Trump appointees at some very critical agencies across Washington. And it really does sort of test the bounds of Musk's power across the federal government. It certainly is injecting a new degree of uncertainty into the federal workforce, not just among the rank and file, which had already been rattled by the first month of the Trump administration, but also among the senior leaders who are trying to ascertain whether this email is actually legitimate.
Now, we kind of have to understand where this actually started in the first place, which is President Trump put up a post on Truth Social saying Elon is doing a great job, but I would like to see him get more aggressive. Remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make greater than ever before. MAGA. And of course, Elon Musk responded to that saying, "Will do, Mr. President." And then the infamous post that Elon Musk made, which clearly sent shockwaves through the federal government. Now, let me show you that post of what he said, which got almost 82 million views. Consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. So, of course, this has led to confusion. And obviously, the media is going to hop on that. They're going to highlight it. And then they're going to try to create this narrative that Elon Musk is creating a civil war between him and the FBI director Kash Patel or Pam Bondi or any of these other agency heads who had to come out and clarify to their departments, their agencies, that no, you're not going to lose your job if you don't respond to that email.
And so just today, we've seen, for example, at the Pentagon, a senior official saying that the Department of Defense is responsible for reviewing the performance of its personnel, and it will conduct a performance review going forward. You've also seen Kash Patel over at the FBI say, please pause on any responses. When and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. At the State Department, a senior undersecretary is telling the staff there that no employee is obligated to report their activities outside their department chain of command. So you already see this uncertainty brewing. I think what is unclear and what no official seems to be clear about at all is whether Musk's directive in his tweet that any employee who doesn't respond will be terminated is actually actionable.
So you're already starting to hear what the narrative is going to be this week. Elon Musk is creating confusion. Elon Musk is pissing off the other half of the Trump administration, things of that nature in order to do what? To create a division between him and President Trump, which is what they've been trying to do since day one, obviously. But I want to show you an example of that because we're looking on this website called Ground News, and you guys can check this out for yourself by going to ground.news/Devore. You guys know I love this website. It helps us produce this show for you, by the way. But if I look at articles that are on the left, because that's what this tool will do, what are they actually saying about this story? Well, let's look at the Associated Press. They say key federal agencies refuse to comply with Musk's latest demand in his cost-cutting crusade. And here's another one from The Independent. Patel tells FBI staff to ignore Musk's email as signs of power struggle emerges. I don't see a sign of power struggle, okay? I seen a sign of communication, leadership, clarification that needs to happen on an ongoing basis because we know they're moving at a speed we've never seen in history, of course. Now, what are articles saying that lean right? Well, they're keeping it very straightforward. Some U.S. agencies tell workers not to reply to Musk's "What did you do last week?" email. I think that's a fair statement, of course. The Washington Times says Patel tells FBI employees to ignore Musk's email on work reporting for now. And you could just hear how the tone is very different. This is why, guys, it's very important to do your own research. Even on this show, I'm going to get some things wrong because I'm not perfect and I'm not a robot. You guys know that. But that's why you should be using a tool like this that will show you both sides of the story and what the media is saying. And this is why I love Ground News, and you will too. So subscribe through my link at ground.news/Devore or download the mobile app and use offer code Devore for 40% off the Vantage plan, which will give you a limited access to everything that we just covered in this video. Now, I already showed you what the media outlets are saying. Now let me show you what some political figures are saying, like Chris Christie, who went on to ABC this morning and said exactly what you would expect about all this.
I want to start with what Elon Musk did on Saturday, which is order all federal employees to list their accomplishments or basically be fired. Can he do that?
No, he can't. Let's look at it a few ways, Martha. First, from a legal perspective, you have a situation where it is a complete overstep for him to be asking people, what did you do in the last week? And then use that as a basis to evaluate whether someone should be retained or fired. As with everybody's employment, things vary from week to week. And I think that if that went to court with an employee who was fired, if Mr. Musk and his minions didn't find what they did in the last week acceptable, there would be very little, if any, legal basis for them to be able to prevail, meaning the government. But secondly, as a former governor, too, from a management perspective, you can see what a clown car this is right now. Because you've got, for instance, FBI Director Kash Patel, appropriately emailing his people in response saying, don't answer it. Don't answer the questionnaire. Any review process will be done internally by the FBI. Same thing from the National Security Agency. Same thing from the acting U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia. So, you have people, doing this, pointing in each direction. You do this, you do that. It shows that, again, this type of idea of Musk coming in there with the chainsaw that he was famously brandishing at a political event in Washington, D.C. this week. It's a lot more complicated than that. Running government's a lot more complicated than that. And hopefully they get their act together at some point.
But Chris, the Trump administration has had some wins in these legal battles. In fact, a federal judge agreed that they can now put thousands of USAID employees on leave. So any surprise there? And take a look at all the wins they have had.
No, Martha, look, I think that if you follow an organized process, the executive will have a lot of authority to be able to lay people off, reorder priorities within the government as a whole, and within particular departments as well. USAID as an agency, but working very closely with the State Department. So it's not that they can't do it. It's just you can't do it in this haphazard way where you have one guy, Elon Musk, and his Doge area, which isn't really even a department of the government, sending emails out. And then you have the people the president has appointed, and in some instances, like in Kash Patel's instance, are Senate confirmed people saying, no, disregard that. That's where the person at the top has to give appropriate direction. And that has not come from the President of the United States at this point. He's giving different opinions to different folks, giving different direction. It leads to this type of thing. And that's where they're going to get in trouble in court if people sue, because there's no process for these folks to be dealt with fairly and appropriately, like any employee in the public sector or the private sector needs to be dealt with.
Okay, so let's just do a rundown of what the left is saying about all this. Number one, Elon Musk is an unelected billionaire who is the actual president, and President Trump is the one who's actually working for him. That's the first thing. Secondly, this billionaire, who's also the owner of SpaceX, does not have the legitimate access and should not access our personal data, whether that is the IRS or the Treasury payment system. Number three, Elon Musk is creating chaos within MAGA and inside the Trump administration because of this post on X, and he's trying to stretch his power muscles, right? This is what they're going to run with. So be prepared, ladies and gentlemen, because the fact still remains. We're only 1 month into this administration, and also Elon Musk deserves the patience and the time to prove that his method to this madness is absolutely worth it for the American people. And I believe the Congressman Mullen here, he also believes that.
I would tell you that the majority of the American people want to make sure that their taxpayers are being used correctly. I don't want anybody to lose their job. That's the last thing we want. But at the same time, anytime you're trying to secure this country, which a national security risk we have right now is our national debt, we have to make changes, and we have to make it quickly. Unfortunately, when we have bureaucrats and politicians that have wastefully spent the American taxpayer dollars, and we don't have to look any further than USAID to see the wasteful billions of dollars that were spent, cuts had to take place. And every business owner understands this. Every business owner understands that you have to get your house in order before you can advance. That's exactly what Doge is doing. Think about this. Every successful business owner out there and every successful business has hired consultants to come in and take an unbiased look and make changes, because sometimes when you're so close to it, you can't see what the real changes need to take place. Elon Musk is the United States consultant right now. He is literally the best entrepreneur we've had in our lifetime, and he's doing it for free. And he's taking an unbiased look, saying these programs make no sense. Let's save the taxpayer dollars and get our house in order.
So the more I get into this, the more I realize that what people really need to answer for themselves is how committed are they to cutting out fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government? How serious are they when it comes to paying down the deficit? Because if you can't do that with the small things, you're not going to be able to accomplish that with the big things. And some of the small things include federal workers waking up one day and they have to find a new job. I mean, is that pain and hearing those emotional stories, Is that enough for you to say, you know what, I'm not actually committed to cutting down federal waste? Because let's be honest here. They've been saying they've been wanting to do this for so long. And now that Elon Musk is actually doing something, they don't want to do it this way. Now, if we don't do it this way, I don't think they're ever going to do it. And so I want that to be food for thought for you. But let me know what your answer is in the comment section below.
Should these federal workers be hopeful that at some point Congress will step in?
Well, you reported earlier on the town hall meetings a number of my Republican colleagues are having around the country, and it's got to be shocking to them that there's almost a uniform reaction of revulsion by voters at what is happening and where the authority really is and the need for the legislative branch to reassert itself. I hope that has a salutary effect on the Republicans because they have essentially abrogated their responsibilities as members of Congress who take an oath to uphold the Constitution and essentially outsourced their legislative responsibilities to an unelected billionaire who has never worked for government.
Now, he brings up a good point that I think a lot of my political junkies out there would agree with, which is this. Going through this madness that they're going to call it, of course, is actually entertaining and a good exercise on what is our understanding of the Constitution. Where is the line for the executive branch, the separation of power? What does SCOTUS really believe in regards to that? How will they see this? And I think if you're really into politics at that granular level, you're going to love this because this administration is definitely going to stretch it. And I think this is good for our democracy, as they like to call it, even though we know it's a republic. Now, there's another developing story. Kathy Hochul did an interview this morning with Face the Nation, and she had some words for President Trump and what she plans to do to fight back. Check this out.
Federal funds account for about 40% of your state's budget. President Trump is threatening to withhold federal funds to governors in order to force compliance with his agenda. Are you Democratic governors going to start to work together on this? Is there legal pushback?
What he is doing is, they've described it as flooding the zone. They're attacking California when it comes to FEMA dollars. They're filing lawsuits in Illinois. They're going after Maine on this, and they're coming after programs that have been duly put in place in the state of New York. What they're trying to do is create this theater of all kinds of activity that is trying to be a distraction to us. And when someone floods the zone in a football game, what you need to have is the defenders be very disciplined, smart, but also stand their ground. And that's exactly what the governor of New York will do in cooperation with our governors. We're not going to sit idly by and let our rights be attacked. We'll work with you when there's common ground, no doubt about it. Let's build great projects and infrastructure. There's areas where we're going to work with you on immigration and getting the violent criminals off our streets. We do not dispute that. But don't think that you can just come in and bully us around and not expect a reaction from governors.
So my only thing for the New York governor is this. Where's this level of defiance when it came to gang members from other countries entering this country illegally and setting up shop in your state, right? What about that? Where was your defiance when President Biden was just jacking up the inflation rate due to his incompetence and wasteful spending? I mean, if you really care about New Yorkers as much as you say you do, then the results should show that, and they haven't. And in fact, it took the mayor of New York City to go outside that rhetoric and that messaging from the Democratic Party, which is why a lot of people believe he was indicted over. Now, of course, I have a receipt here to show you. Here is Newsmax talking about how she plans to reduce the force of law enforcement. She plans to reduce the workforce in law enforcement. This is corrections, police officers, etc. Hear it for yourself.
One story, too, that's making waves, and I want to get to this, Joe, because it's something that you said that this is probably going to blow up, this story, and not a lot of people are covering it. This has to do with the prisons here in New York.
Yeah, right now, quietly as it is kept, because mainstream media does not want to talk about it, every single prison in the state of New York has correction officers out on strike. The conditions are not safe. We have seen a 110% increase in assaults against correctional officers since the HALT Act was put in place back in 2021 that prohibits them mostly from putting people in solitary confinement. We've seen it even worse with inmate-on-inmate assault. And so they have walked out of the jails saying enough is enough. Kathy Hochul must listen, and she has met their demands with threats of further reductions in staffing. Right now, they've had 70% staffing. They're trying to make 70 the new 100, a 30% deficit in staffing.
So I'm not actually shocked by this story because it's the same thing in California. These Democrat governors believe reducing law enforcement is the solution. And I don't know where they get that from. I don't see any data on that. If you do have it, please let the show know. Put it in the comment section or email us because I've yet to see it. Okay, the bottom line is this. Law and order should be at the priority list, at the top of the priority list, I mean. And when it's not, and DEI is, we see what has happened as a result. So again, instead of her, I guess, focusing on trying to fight Trump, she should probably focus on making her state safer and greater for New Yorkers. Now, this brings us to the question of this video today. What is your take about what Elon Musk said? Do you believe that what he is doing is hurting President Trump or helping President Trump and ultimately will deliver positive results for the American people? You guys know what I think. I think we need to give him time, let him do his thing, and judge him based on the results. But I want to know how you see it. Put your answers in the comment section below. Now, we started today with some great news, and I'm not too sure you missed this, but in case you did, MSNBC has canceled Joy Reid's show. Yes, you heard that correctly, Deranged Reid. I love this. And if you missed out on that and more stories from earlier today, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.